Welcome. Today in Gardening with the Masters, we will be learning about companion plants for your vegetable garden with Bernalillo County Extension Agent Sarah Moran. Sarah is originally from El Salvador in Central America. She earned her master's degree from NMSU in horticulture, and she works with community members to address their garden issues. And she also develops educational programs and workshops in English and in Spanish for many urban horticulture topics. In case you are wondering, Sarah's favorite vegetables to grow are radishes. She likes these because they're easy and because of their various sizes and colors, their beauty. She has experienced, like the rest of us, the trials and tribulations of gardening. And she says that failures are good opportunities for gardeners to learn. They give us permission to experiment with new ways of doing things. Thank you, Sarah, for being with us today and for teaching us about companion planting.
Thank you so much for having me and for inviting me to do this presentation. My contact information, phone number, and email, it's there in case you need to, have any questions later tonight, through the weekend. If hopefully this presentation will let you thinking about companion plantings. All right, so I like to start this presentation with this picture that I wish it could be my garden, but that's not the case yet. Just think about it, make some observations on what you look here. And you probably first notice the colorful flowers in both beds, some nice leafy greens, lettuce in this case, something that potentially look like basil, different kind of basil. Of course, some weeds, because why not, right? Some pepper plants, maybe some tomato plants as well. And we have a nice shrub there and some something that's trying to be a grass, I think. So what I look here is diversity. It's, just planting several different things instead of just one single plant. And that's what I want you to think. Companion planting, we can also talk about plant associations, intercropping, but most importantly, or what I would like, the term that I like to use is actually biodiversity. Just incorporating all of those different plants that will have benefits in the garden. The term companion planting or plant association started with the Three Sisters that you probably know about that. When we have the corn plant, in corn it's a very tall plant, so it will serve as a support for the beans, right? And the beans are legumes. Legumes are well known because they can take nitrogen from the atmosphere and fix it into the soil, which and that's going to benefit the plants. And of course, we are going to have something that grow a little short or small. That will be the squash plant. And the squash plant will also act as a living mulch, protecting the soil, kind of keep temperature, keep humidity, and also blocking some of the sunlight to avoid weed germination around the area. So this is the idea, right? Having all those good neighbors, all those good plant association, all that biodiversity that helps in the garden. Some concepts about this companion planting is the practice. It's also considered to be a form of polyculture to avoid that we plant single crops or to avoid monoculture. Some plants can benefit from having some other plants in the near proximity. The actual scientific mechanisms are not always understood, and much of the information available is based on experiences and observations by many generations of growers. And I have some experience, planting a couple of these plants together. So I do have my own experience, which could be different than some of your experiences as well. So we are going to share some of that. There are some benefits to this type of planting, companion planting, and we are going to talk about each one of them here in a couple of seconds. We're going to talk about trap cropping, improved soil fertility, that symbiotic nitrogen fixation, some of the biochemical pest suppression, physical spatial interaction, how important they are, some nurse cropping, beneficial habitats, and of course, that security through diversity. Let's start with trap cropping. Well, what does that mean? It means that a plant is used to attract pests away from the main plant. There are some examples, a couple of examples. One of them is when we grow cabbage, we can grow a few colors as well around the cabbage because the colors are more attractive to a diamond black moth, which, it could be very devastating for cabbage. But since our goal is to have some cabbage, to enjoy cabbage, so we plant colors to deter the moth. Another one is a hover squash, is a variety of the squashes that seems to be more attractive to squash bugs. So if you have a specific variety of a squash that you would like to grow, hopefully a squash bug free, then you can consider tried hover squash, and because that's going to attract them. So you also need to be careful to not attract pests or more pests to your garden. Then that's of course not going to be desirable. Symbiotic nitrogen fixation, it's when the nitrogen fixing crops are used to boost that nitrogen in the soil. Legumes are the best example for this. And when we have a soil, for example, that has not enough nitrogen, then we can plant some legumes. Legumes will take nitrogen from the atmosphere, and using their own mechanism, it's going to fix the nitrogen in the soil. Now, keep in mind that most of the nitrogen fixed by the legume is going to be used by the legume. The nitrogen fixing plants, legumes are good ones. Snap beans, string beans, peas, pinto beans, any kind of beans, clover, alfalfa, those are also good ones. They generate plant available nitrogen from the atmospheric nitrogen. I do plant some beans next to my pepper plants, for example. So far, they are doing good. The nitrogen fixation process, these nitrogen fixations occur in a symbiotic relation between the legumes and also the rhizobia bacteria. So there should be a compatible rhizobium, which must be present in the soil. So this inoculation could be possible. The root hormone must be produced, and then the plant starts to fix this nitrogen. Sometimes the nitrogen, those nodules, you can see those nodules in the root, and if you open it up, they tend to look pinkish color. So that's a good indication that that particular plant is kind of doing that nitrogen fixation process. And those nodules, they sort of look like the ones here, here in the picture. So you can inoculate those legumes. You can probably find different type of products, different type of brands as well. Make sure you read all the information and make sure that they do what you want. And follow the label directions as well, as far as how you're gonna mix it, how you're going to do that inoculation process before you plant the bean plants or bean seeds. Biochemical pest suppression. Well, some plants exude some phytochemicals that suppress or repel pests or diseases. So the neighbor plants that we plant around that particular plant might be affected. It's also known as an allelopathic effect. One of the best examples is black walnut trees that produce the jugular substance. Now, with this being said, a couple of years ago, I actually visited a resident here in Bernalillo County. They do have a black walnut tree, and they had different type of flowers growing under the tree. They had lilies, they have some echinaceas as well, cosmos too, and they were, it was a few other vegetation around that tree. And there is also information that this allelopathic effect might not be necessarily a concern if we want to plant some other vegetation around plants that produce this jugular substance. Rye residue suppress germination of weeds, and however, if we transplanted tomatoes or broccoli, then they will do fine. The allelopathy and fennel, it's another example. Fennel, it's highly allelopathic. It inhibits growth or causes bolting for most garden plants. So they are however, they attract beneficial insects and they can repel fleas. So fennel, it's well known by that old saying, plant fennel near your kennel. So it's another thing to consider. Some other phytochemicals and garlic. Garlic has this pungency smell, and it's the result of all the sulfur containing chemicals. Some people claim that if you plant them under or around the peach trees, then you probably can't repel some borders. Also around roses, I have heard that you can repel some of the unwanted insects. If you planted under apple, pear trees, you can also repel the cutting moths. Again, garlic, it's also good to repel aphids as well, and it's a good companion for your cucumbers, peas, and lettuce too. Some brassicas such as broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kale, canola, turnip, mustards, they will produce the isothiocyanates, which are also sulfur-containing compounds that shows to reduce some soil pathogens. And in some cases, they can inhibit seed germination of vegetables. Now let's jump into the physical spatial interaction. And this is pretty much just pair tall sun-loving plants, and then in between those plants, try to grow plants that actually do best in shade. So when the tall plants reaches their height, they will provide that shade that the other plants need. One example is the corn plants, which are believed to disorient the adult squash vine borders. The prickly squash vines also may discourage the vertebrate pest from dining on the corn. So one of the examples, like we just previously talked, are the tree sisters, where this corn will provide that shade, as well as it will disorient the adult squash vine border too. Another example is the sunny waffle garden. These are waffles that are approximately 12 by 12, and each individual cell will have a high rim around. You can plant sunflowers, around the edges, because sunflowers will grow tall and they will provide some wind protection and also some sun protection. And it will allow for water efficiency in our climate. So same idea here, the Three Sister, you can grow your squashes in those square, then you grow your corn, and around the corn, you grow the beans. And then we got nurse cropping. Well, these are tall or dense canopy plants that will provide windbreak to delicate plants. For example, oats have long been used to prevent weed growth and allow for establishment of alfalfa and other forage crops. We also talk about the use of sunflower to, for that wind break, and also for shade, to provide shade to some of our vegetables. Another example is when you grow broccoli and lettuce. So this is the idea that broccoli will eventually grow tall enough that it can protect a lettuce, until you harvest the lettuce. So it will create that shade that lettuce likes. And it's also important because it's going to create that beneficial habitats. It provides beneficial habitats for your insects and also sometimes for your wildlife, hummingbirds, rat runners, rabbits, although sometimes you probably don't want to see rabbits around your vegetable garden, but more or less they are part of the wildlife as well. Some flowering plants, some beneficial companions, chamomile, chrysanthemums, geraniums, lavender, marigolds, and nasturtiums are good for to have around. The chamomile, for example, you can use the German chamomile, not the Roman. The German, it's a good companion for cabbage and onions. It will attract beneficial insects, including the hoverfly and the wasp, and you can grow it easily. Although the seed is really, really small, it germinates quite fast. And once it germinates, produce the flower, set the seed, and you will have a self-seeded plant. Chrysanthemums, this is a widely known insecticide because it's where you get the pyrethrum extract, and also the roots exudates some root, do some exudates that can kill some of the root knot nematodes in your garden as well. Geraniums, some people claim that it repels cabbage worm. It's a good companion to have around your grapes, roses, corn, cabbage. It's something that I would like to try around the grapes, especially because I had a really bad year of grape leaf hopper. So hopefully that will deter the grape leaf hoppers, which might mean that I might lose, some geraniums as well, but that should be okay. Part of the experiment. It's a good companion for tomatoes and peppers. However, it can distract the beet leaf hopper, which is this tiny little insect that you will see here. And you might know that this tiny little insect, it's a carrier for the curly top virus. So if this little insect goes to the tomato or the pepper plant, it could distort the normal growing of the plant. It will make your leaves curly and the veins will start to show like a purplish color. And at that point, your best bet is pretty much just to remove the plant. So having some geraniums around your tomatoes, your peppers could be beneficial. Clover, I really like clover. Clover is a legume. You will be fixing some nitrogen. It's a good companion to grapes. And when you plant them with cabbage, it has shown to interfere with the invasion of aphids and also cabbage worm. Clover will attract beneficial insects and will attract bees, a lot of bees. Then we got lavender as well. Lavender will repel fleas and moth and potentially some white flies too. It will deter cuddly moth. So if you have experienced that, you might want to try a couple of lavender plants. And if it works, let me know. That's also good to know. and attracts beneficial insects and also, pollinators as well. Then we got marigolds. We like to grow marigolds around our tomatoes because, well, it will repel some insect. It could repel many harmful insects, including whiteflies too. The roots of the marigolds will exudate that chemical. I'm not quite sure the name of the chemical though, but it's thought that it could kill or keep the root nematode populations under control in your soil. Mexican marigolds may have herbicidal effect, as we saw in the previous slide, and which could be good for keeping bindweed under control, and may inhibit the growth of beans and cabbage. Nasturtiums, really nice plants. They are good companions for radishes and brassicas. They are a trap crop for aphids, squash bugs, cucumber beetles, whiteflies. And this means that your main plant, the plant that you like to keep as healthy and as pest-free as possible, will be that way, but you're probably gonna see that the nasturtium will start to show up a higher population of all the other insects. It can be planted as a living protective barrier around tomato, cabbage, and cucumbers. It will be loaded with flowers, and the flowers have a very nice, bright color, yellows, orange, reds as well. I think I do like it more for the color of the flower than, because of the benefits, but it's excellent for attracting beneficial insects and also predatory insects, which are also important. Some herbs like basil, coriander, mint, parsley, rosemary, and sage, those are also good to have them around. Basil is a good companion for tomatoes, peppers, asparagus. Now here is where personal experience will show up. Some people claim that planting basil next to your tomato will give the tomato a better flavor. I have tried that. I really didn't notice the difference. I don't know if that depends on the tomato variety, but I really didn't notice that difference. I still grow basil. I like the flavor. I love the flower. The flower will attract a lot of beneficial insects and bees too, and it's easy to save seeds from basil. It will repel thrips, possibly flies, and also mosquitoes. It says that you shouldn't be planted this near sage. Next, we have coriander, a member of the carrot family, will repel insect pests, including aphids and spider mites, and it's a good companion for potatoes. Dill will also attract beneficial insects such as hoverflies and wasps. It will repel aphids and spider mites and some squash bugs. It's a good companion for cabbage, lettuce, onions, sweet corn, and cucumbers. It will attract tomato hornworm, so watch for that. And do not plant, so therefore don't plant it near your tomatoes. I got a dill plant, it was loaded on aphids, therefore it was loaded with ladybugs, which was a good thing. The only bad thing is that the ladybugs kind of stayed around the dill plant and they didn't seem to be interested, of course, in the other ones because, aphids, the source of food, what was actually in the dill. So that's okay. Then we got mint. Mint will repel cabbage moth, ants, flea beetles, aphids, will attract beneficial. If you let it flower, it attracts pollinators like there's no other. Hoverflies and predatory wasps as well. It's a good companion for cabbages and tomato. Now, mint, it's prolific, so it has a weed potential. It can become invasive, so watch out for that. Even if you grow it in a container, it always find a way to kind of go out of the holes that sometimes are around the container. but it's a good plant. It's very hardy resistant plant. Parsley will allow some, if you allow some of the parsley to flower, then you will be allowing to attract parasitic wasp and hoverflies. Good companion for asparagus, carrot, chive, onions, tomato. It is better not to plant it with mint. The only reason that I found why not planted with mint, and I did that, I plant parsley with mint. The only downside that I saw is the mint pretty much to cover the parsley. I'm not quite sure if there is some other chemicals around the soil, around the root area, why you shouldn't be planting it with mint. But my only reason was because mint pretty much took over and I didn't have any parsley that season. So next is rosemary. Rosemary could repel cabbage moth and other insect pests, and it's a good companion for cabbage, beans, and carrots. And then we got sage. Sage will repel cabbage moth, flea beetles as well. Good companion for brassicas and carrots. Don't plant sage with cucumbers or onion. I was kind of looking, I did a little research or why wouldn't it be good to plant sage along cucumbers and onions. I found that not in onions because it will not allow onions to set flowers. Again, from personal experience, I did had some sage. It was a really small plant next to my onions that I let them grow and set flower for some not particular reason. And I actually didn't do it because companion plant, it was, just happened to have an onion next to the sage. And my onion actually set flower. So as we mentioned in the couple of first slides, all this comes from experiences, from generations to generation. But I think this is why companion planting is important, because it's another form of incorporating diversity, which means not putting all eggs in one basket. Like you don't want to have all tomatoes in just one section and only tomatoes, because you can get curly top virus or something could go wrong with the irrigation, or you never know, and you can lose all of them. So it's good to incorporate all of the other plants, flowers, leafy greens, et cetera, et cetera. So you kind of mimic that ecosystem. The University of California did a research that demonstrate that mixing broccoli cultivars can reduce aphid pressure. So if you have different varieties of broccoli, that will reduce your aphid population. You might not eliminate aphids, but at least you can keep them under control so they won't cause much damage. And combining vegetable crops in your garden with beneficial companions as well. So intercropping, another term for companion planting. In this case, we are planting 2 or more crops in the same space. So we are trying to be efficient with the use of our space and the use of our resources, mainly with water. We need to take advantage of the grow rate, and we need to also harvest quick when the crop is already mature. So we are on top of that. For example, we can plant carrots and radishes. We can also do cabbage and lettuce as well. Now we're going to jump into a list of vegetable preferred companion, which pretty much going to look like this. We got some beans, diversity. There is diversity, different type of beans in colors and sizes, and they might react differently. So make sure that to investigate the variety that you have or that you plan to plant. Companion is a good companion for potatoes, cucumber, corn, and you might not want it to plant next to onions. Carrots are good companions for tomatoes, peas, and lettuce. And rosemary, onion, sage, it's said to repel carrot fly. And it's incompatible with dill. Some of the brassicas, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, collards, kale, turnips, radish, and mustards, those are examples of brassicas. They are good companions for beets, onions, spinach, chard, and potatoes. You might want to avoid to plant it too close to bean poles, tomatoes, dill, and strawberries too. The corn, it's incompatible with tomato because you don't want the tomato fruit worm, also attacked your crops. And then you have good companions for potato, beans, peas, pumpkin, cucumber, and squash, of course. Onions also, you can grow onions next to beets, carrots, lettuce, some brassicas as well. And you might want to keep them away from beans and peas. Lettuce is a good companion for carrots, radishes, strawberries, and cucumbers too. Tomatoes, of course, you can plant them next to onion, asparagus, carrot, cucumber. You can try basil as well, and let me know if that changed any of the flavor of the tomatoes. You can also do marigolds around tomatoes, and let me know if you notice less insect activity around your tomatoes. And you might want to keep them away from pole beans. And then we got some succession planting. Well, this succession planting pretty much involves staggering your plantings to extend your harvest. For example, if you are a fan of radishes, which I am, then you sow a few radish seeds every 2 weeks. This is going to allow the radish to mature, and you will have a constant supply of radishes. Know your plants. Know if it's a determinate plant. Determinate is a bush type. It tends to set fruit at the same time and exhibit early maturity. On the other hand, the indeterminate type of plant, it's a vining, it tends to be a pole type of plant. It will tend to set fruit over a prolonged period of time. However, overall, because it will continue to grow, it will have a higher yield overall. Some succession plantings after harvest, then immediately replant the space. This is also good for the soil. You don't want to leave any bare soil in your garden. So it's good to kind of create some sort of coverage for the soil. And intercropping, of course, can be used to optimize this production, especially if you have a limited space where you are growing your plants. And at the same time, if you do that succession, if you do that rotation of crops of plants, then you're taking care of your soil, you're replenishing some nutrients, you are avoiding the soil completely desiccate or stay just exposed to the elements. So in short, some benefits of companion planting have been observed through the history. However, the exact mechanisms are not well or fully explained or understood. Much of the information is based on experiences and observations of many generations of growers, gardeners, farmers. So it is good that each one of us will continue to observe what works, what doesn't work for you. Not your results, keep a record if that's possible, and then plan accordingly. I always say that, what works for me might not work for you, but we can always learn from our experience. So that's the idea And always keep in mind that having that diversity in your garden, it's important to keep that little ecosystem functioning to your benefit. There are some sources of information. There is this nice book. It's called Carrots Love Tomatoes, Roses Love Garlic. The author of both books is the same. It's Luis Rio. You can also find a nice chart of like a list of different plants, vegetables that are compatible with each other, with different other plants, from the National Sustainable Agriculture Information Service. And here is the link to that PDF file. This will provide some information about the allelopathic effects or not effect of walnut too, this two here. And there is also another book that I found that it was really easy to read. It was shared with me yesterday or today by one of my coworkers, and it's called Companion Planting. You can see it here. So I'm sorry I didn't add it to my list, but the author is Bob Flower Dew. And it's a really nice, it's a really small book, and I love it. It seems really easy. It looks really easy to read, lots of picture, lots of color. So that's another resource for you as well. And well, credits for this presentation goes to Stephanie Walker, Dr. Stephanie Walker. She is the NMSU vegetable specialist.